ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We are studying the part 3 of Swamiji's Practical Vedanta, a series of lectures delivered on the Chandogya Upanishad, in which Swamiji is showing how to practice Vedanta. In this chapter we see, after reading from the 6th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad, Aruni Shataketu Samvad, where Aruni repeatedly tells Shataketu that the subtlest reality of all is the truth ultimate, and that is what you are. After reading this out, Swamiji has taken a line of thought to explain this to us. I do not know if anybody else in this world has taken this line of thought or not, though it is fully convincing, absolutely logical or convincing. And we go back to that. From there we read what we already read, 2 paras we are going back, where Swamiji has introduced this line of thought. Now, there are 2 principles of knowledge. There is a lecture by Swamiji, Reason and Religion. In that also Swamiji has shown the same thing. Science and religion, there also Swamiji has shown the same thing. So, it is something which science proposes, which science cannot fulfill. What Swamiji is proposing? The one principle is that we know by referring the particular to the general and the general to the universal. We know. That is called our knowledge. When we are able to refer one individual, particular, to the general, we think that we are known. And that general, when they refer to universal, then we are fully known. That is our very constitution of the mind. If an apple falls, we are disturbed. We told on the last occasion that in a Vedantic book it is called Chitta Vishranti Rahitya. Our mind cannot rest content when something falls, something happens for the first time. And when it happens repeatedly, when we are able to find a group for what our experience, we call it we are known. So knowledge is keeping things in pigeonholes. In our mind, there are pigeonholes of things, different things like library sections. And if this book, which section it will go, if we have found, then we are known. That is the very, Swamiji has said, we know by referring the particular to the general and the general to the universal. So the very fact of knowledge is like that. And the second is that anything of which the explanation is sought is to be explained so far as possible from its own nature. That means if there is some external cause, then it is not scientific. So first is the very nature of knowledge, the second is scientific knowledge. And scientific knowledge requires us to find the explanation from within. Taking the first principle, we see that all our knowledge really consists of classifications going higher and higher, more and more generalized. When something happens singly, we are as it were dissatisfied, Chitta Vishranti Rahitya. When it can be shown that the same thing happens again and again, we are satisfied and call it law, call it knowledge. So that is the very definition of our knowledge. That is the very constitution of our mind. When we find that one apple falls, we are dissatisfied. But when we find that all apples fall, we call it the law of gravitation and are satisfied. Till then we are not satisfied. The fact is that from the particular we deduce the general. When we want to study religion, Swamiji says religion is a study and we must apply these two, then only it will satisfy to the thinking man, rational man. We should apply this scientific process. The same principle also holds good there, here. It holds good here. And as a fact, we find that has been the method of all through. So, different religions have tried this very method. In reading these books from which I have been translating to you, Upanishads, the earliest idea that I can trace is this principle of going from the particular to the general. We see how the bright ones became merged into one principle, monotheism. And likewise, in the ideas of the cosmos, we find the ancient thinkers going higher and higher. From the fine elements, they go to finer and more embracing elements. The finer thing is more embracing. And from these particulars, they come to one omnipresent ether. Ether was supposed by science, they could not satisfy it. So what we call Akasha, space, it appears something like vacuum. Akasha is the only correct word. To convey the English equivalent, Swamiji has used the word ether. Omnipotent, one omnipotent ether. And from that, though it is omnipresent, but we have to generalize it more. Even they go to an all-embracing force or prana, it embraces Akasha also. And through all, because in Akasha, animation was not included. In Akasha, consciousness was not included. And so to make it more universal, we take up prana. And through all this runs and through all this runs the principle that one is not separate from the others. So, we are all belong to a group. We are not separate from each other. It is the very ether that exists in the higher form of prana. So, little or more gross, little or more less mobile. So, more generalization. Or the higher form of prana concretes, so to say, and becomes ether. Concrete means becomes little more gross, and so it becomes ether. So to say, and becomes ether, and that ether becomes still grosser, and so on. Tasmadva etasmad atmana akasha sambhuta akashad vayu vayor agni agner apa adhya prithvi. So that is how little more and more grossification takes place. Prithivyo annam, prithivyo aushadaya aushadabhyo annam, annat purusha. The generalization of the personal God is another case in point. So we are now trying to generalize. And through generalization we have reached this point of a personal God. We have seen how the generalization was reached and was called the sum total of all consciousnesses. So in personal God, we include consciousness, and all consciousness, sum total is this personal God. But a difficulty arises, it is an incomplete generalization. We have seen only the consciousness. What about all the matter? We take up only one side of the facts of nature, the fact of consciousness, and upon that we generalize, but the other side is left out. So in the first place, it is a defective generalization. There is another insufficiency, and that relates to the second principle. So explanation from within, we apply that also. Everything should be explained from its own nature. There may have been people who thought that every apple that fell to the ground was dragged down by a ghost. But the explanation is the law of gravitation. And although we know it is not a perfect explanation, because there are also two things and pulling force and all that, yet it is much better than the other. That is how the science proceeds. If something gives little insight, then science is already. Because it is derived from the nature of the thing itself, while the other posits an extraneous cause. So throughout the whole range of our knowledge, the explanation which is based upon the nature of the thing itself is a scientific explanation, and an explanation which brings in an outside agent is unscientific. So the explanation of a personal God as the creator of this universe has to stand that test. Is the personal God outside the universe? If that God is outside of nature, having nothing to do with nature, and this nature is the outcome of the command of that God, and produced from nothing, it is a very unscientific theory. You know the fun about it? Some mythologists say, Christian mythologists, that God made this universe in 6 days, and 7 days it put it up for dry. So the question was asked, when the universe was not created, where is the fence where it can dry? There is a story like that. When the preacher preached like this, the question asked one of the simple minds in the audience. One more question was like that. Then the preacher says, if you ask one more like that, the whole theory will collapse. Because it is insufficient generalization, because it is not giving explanation from within. And this has been the weak point of every theistic religion throughout the ages. These two defects we find in what is generally called the theory of monotheism, the theory of a personal God, with all the qualities of a human being, multiplied very much, who by his will created this universe out of nothing and yet is separate from it. This leads us into two difficulties. Same. As we have seen, it is not a sufficient generalization, and secondly, it is not an explanation of nature from nature. It holds that the effect is not the cause, that the cause is entirely separate from the effect. Cause is God, effect is world. Yet all human knowledge shows that the effect is but the cause in another form. From clay we get the jar. It is clay only. The form has changed. To this idea, the discoveries of modern science are tending every day, and the latest theory that has been accepted on all sides is the theory of evolution. It is already there, it comes out. The principle of which is that the effect is but the cause in another form, a readjustment of the cause. They say the configuration has changed, thing has not changed. How it is arranged is changed. And the cause takes the form of the effect. The theory of creation out of nothing would be laughed at by modern scientists. Because if there is nothing, nothing can come out of it. If there is something, it will change its form. Now, can religion stand these tests? If there be any religious theories which can stand these two tests, they will be acceptable to the modern mind, if the mind is modern really. To the thinking mind, he has told what is modern mind, to the thinking mind. Any other theory which we ask the modern man to believe on the authority of priests or churches or books, he is unable to accept. And the result is a hideous mass of unbelief. That is what Swamiji saw. Hideous mark, because if we do not have any faith, then we are going to ruination. And we cannot have any faith because the faith which is given is not rational enough. So, that is what Swamiji says. Even in those in whom there is an eternal external display of belief, that means we say, oh, we believe this, we believe this. In their hearts, there is a tremendous amount of unbelief. Our heart is not able to accept that something can come out of nothing. Though we just accept, the rest shrink away from religion, as it were, give it up, regarding it as a priestcraft only. So some people accept religion, but real faith is not there. Some people do not accept religion, saying it is only priestcraft, so they go outside the pale of religion. Religion has been reduced to a sort of national form. England, Protestant; France, Catholic; India, Hinduism. So religion is only a national form. It is one of our very best social remnants, let it remain. Society wants us to go to temple, so we go. But the real necessity which the grandfather of the modern man felt for, it is gone. Grandfather means previous generation. Before the advent of science, we wanted God, and we had not applied these two, but we are seekers. And now because the science has given us new thinking, we are not able to accept that. And even if you accept it, it is not 10%. So that thing is gone. The idea of he no longer finds it satisfactory to his reason. The idea of such a personal God and such a creation, the idea which is generally known as monotheism in every religion, cannot hold its own any longer to the modern man. Those who are not sufficiently modern, they accept. In India, it could not hold its own because of the Buddhists. Another side of reason Swamiji is bringing, and that is the Buddhist analysis. It is the strongest analysis in the world. So, this generalization and particular and explanation, this is how in the Western world attacking the religion. In India, there is a Buddhistic analysis. And that was the very point where they gained their victory in ancient times. They could defeat in debate all the Vedic believers because they have stronger analysis. They showed that if we allow that nature is possessed of infinite power and that nature can work out all its wants, it is simply unnecessary to insist that there is something besides nature. Even the soul is unnecessary. That unity of the soul, unity of the whole world called Ishvara, they are not accepted. Automatically things happen. Now what are their strong points? This automatic is not their strong point. What is their strong point? The discussions about substance and qualities is very old. Here comes the real Buddhistic analysis. One second, let me wet my throat. कोई है? मुश्किल है. Please wait a minute. I'll just wet my throat and continue. Yes. Okay. Now, this is another angle where the Buddhist analysis is very strong. And no dualistic concept of whether Hinduism or Christianity or anybody cannot hold at all. Only this Advaitic theory which Swamiji is telling, and it is most practical as he has already told, that only can satisfy this particular analysis of the Buddhist. The discussion about substance and qualities is very old. Swamiji has now brought another point where reason, the analysis, is being told. Swamiji has brought a point particular to general and principle from within. Side by side, Swamiji has brought now another point, and that is the substance and qualities is very old. And you will sometimes find that the old superstition lives even at the present day. Superstition. Most of you have read now during the Middle Ages, and I am very sorry to say even much later, this was one of the subjects of discussion, whether qualities adhere to substance, whether length, breadth and thickness adhere to the substance which you call dead matter, whether the substance remaining the qualities are there or not. To this our Buddhist says, you have no ground for maintaining the existence of such a substance. The qualities are all that exist, you do not see beyond them. So, no logic should apply without the experience. Experience is the ground, pratyaksha, and then anuman. Then only the logic is built up upon that. So the first thing in question is, what do we experience? Other than Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, do we experience anything in the world? We are assuming that there is a world, that there is Akasha which has the Shabda Gun, that there is Vayu which has the Sparsha Gun. Do we experience? We are experiencing Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. The sound, touch, sight, taste and smell. Other than that, we are not experiencing anything. And we are assuming, without experiencing, that there is a world to which these belong. So Swamiji has given an example. There is matter and there is length, breadth and thickness attached to that matter. What are we experiencing? Length, breadth and thickness. Matter we are assuming. Without analysis, we feel that we are seeing a box. We have not analyzed what we are seeing. We have not analyzed our experience. Science goes about the objective analysis, but experience has to analyze. What we have seen? Length, breadth and thickness. How do we assume there is a box? Critical understanding, please. Unless the brain is sharp enough, one cannot follow this line of argument. And there what Swamiji says, they gained ground in the ancient times and defeated all the dualists of India and throughout the world. To this our Buddhist says, you have no ground for maintaining the existence of such substance. The qualities are all that exist. You do not see beyond them. See actual experience. This is just the position of most of our modern agnostics. Agnostics, they say we can't know the real nature of things. We know only the qualities. For it is this fight of the substance and qualities that on a higher plane take the form of the fight between noumenon and phenomenon. Noumenon means explanation from one. Phenomenon means accepting multi multitude. There is the phenomenal world, the universe of continuous change, and there is something behind which does not change. We are assuming this. And this duality of existence, noumenon and phenomenon, some hold is true, and others with better reason claim that we have no right to admit the two. For what we see, feel and think, so better analysis. First analysis, assumption only. The second party is showing that we see, feel and think is only the phenomenon. We see the multitude. Why assume there is unity? You have no right to assert that there is anything beyond the phenomenon, and there is no answer to this. From the ordinary dualistic standpoint, the standpoint of a personal God, the only answer we get is from the monistic theory of the Vedanta. That is why it is more practical. Practical in the sense acceptable to the modern mind. Acceptable to the mind which has the capacity for a sharp analysis of our experience. So, explanation from within, more and more generalization. Now when we are trying for explanation from within, we have to start from our experience. And so, on the basis of that experience, nobody can stand against it. But the Vedanta which Swamiji is proposing, based upon the Chandogya 6th chapter, that stands these tests. How? Swamiji will show now. The only answer we get is from the monistic theory of the Vedanta. It is true that only one exists. And that one is either phenomenon or noumenon. They are accepting half of what the Buddhists say, that only one can be true. They said yes. It is not true that there are two, something changing, and in and through that something which does not change. Two cannot be there. But it is the one and the same thing which appears as changing and which in reality is unchangeable. So, Buddhists are asking, have you experienced this substance? Vedanti will say, yes. Yes, I have experienced. I do not call it the substance having qualities. I call it the reality. Because when that is realized, the qualities vanish. That is how Swamiji is establishing the truth of the Nirguna Brahman. The qualities which adhere to the personal God, through the qualities we entered inside and we found a personal God. But when we went ahead, we actually experienced the reality. And when we experienced the reality, there was no qualities at all. Now we experience the qualities again. So, very easily we deduce it is not logic, it is experience. That it is one which appears as many. So the whole explanation is on the practical experience. Dualists cannot explain how God created, becomes a terrible puzzle. His Leela, his Maya, they are only terms. Did he produce science? Nothing. So, beyond qualities when we are actually able to experience, that is practical. Then we come across the reality, and this reality appears as many, so the Sagun becomes included in the Nirgun. Nirgun Brahma being the absolute reality, but that itself appears as this multitude, so it becomes Sagun. That is the only explanation possible, please. No other theory can be fully rational. It is not dogmatism, it is rationalism. It is not true that there are two. Something changing and in and through that something which does not change. But it is the one and the same thing which appears as changing and which is in reality unchangeable. We understood now? Through the experience of the rishis, that Aruni telling Shataketu, that subtlest thing is the reality. That is your Atman. And from that, he gives an example. You bring a seed of the banyan tree, and if you break the seed, you see nothing, but the whole banyan tree has come out of that. So, the subtler thing, the more manifested it becomes. We have come to think of the body and mind and soul as many important things. Philosophers have confused us by giving three names. But really there is only one, and that one is appearing in all these various forms. When the mind is gross, we see body only. When our perception is subtler, we see the mind only. And when our perception is subtlest, we see the one consciousness only. At that time we do not see the body. At that time we do not see the mind. Take the well-known illustration of the monist, the rope appearing as the snake. There was a discussion among some people whether Swamiji is identical with Shankara's thought or not. And one question was asked, has Swamiji used anywhere the famous example of a rope and a snake? If he has used that, that means his thing is identical with Shankara. And there he is. There he is in this practical Vedanta. Take the well-known illustration of the monist, the rope appearing as the snake. Some people in the dark or through some other cause mistake the rope for the snake. But when knowledge comes, the snake vanishes and it is found to be a rope. We do not see both together. By this illustration, the illustration to show noumenon and phenomenon, substance and qualities. We see that when the snake exists in the mind, the rope has vanished. And when the rope exists, the snake has gone. When we see phenomenon and phenomenon only around us, the noumenon has vanished. We have not seen the God or the Advaitic reality. But when we see the noumenon, the unchangeable, it naturally follows that the phenomenon has vanished. If we can experience the Nirgun Brahman, then only we have right to say that there is no world. Now, we understand better the position of both the realist and the idealist. Another, because in the West that idea was going on, or among the Buddhists. Realist means what we see outside is real. Idealist does not start from ideal, idea. Idea in our mind is real. That appears outside. To them, mind is more real than matter. That is called Buddhist Vijnanavad. In the West, idealism and realism. I will give a small example. We take the illustration of optics in science. Where a figure is drawn and we are shown, rays came from the thing and fell on our eyes. Have we seen the rays? Nobody. Nobody. Then something happened inside. Then our mind reacted and we called it the table or a chair. What we saw, only the reaction of our mind. That is what the idealists claim. That you have not seen the outside world at all. You are inferring, because there is a variety, there should be an outside world. Now the argument of the realist is that if there is no variety, how are you experiencing? So this discussion goes on just like the substance and qualities. Another form of the discussion is realism and idealism. What the Vedantists will say? Neither realism nor idealism. Reality, one without a second, appears as thought, appears as outside world. Both are appearances. Through the mind it appears as this, through the indriyas it appears as that. The realist sees the phenomenon only, and the idealist looks to the phenomenon, mind only. For the idealist, the really genuine idealist, who has truly arrived at the power of perception, whereby he can get away from all ideas of change, for him, the changeful universe, Swamiji has gone to absolute idealism, not the mind, not the changing thing. For him, the changeful universe has vanished, and he has the right to say that it is all delusion, there is no change. The realist at the same time looks at the changeful. For him, the unchangeable has vanished because he has not seen that. And he has a right to say that this is all real. What is the outcome of this philosophy? It is that the idea of personal God is not sufficient. For that, Swamiji is bringing all this. We have to get to something higher, to the impersonal idea. It is the only logical step that we can take. Now the connection between the two Swamiji is showing. It is the only logical step that we can take, not that the personal idea would be destroyed by that. Not that is wrong Vedanta. Some Vedantis harp upon Nirgun and Sagun cannot exist and all that they talk wrongly. Swamiji's Vedanta is practical. Not that the personal idea would be destroyed by that. Not that we supply proof that the personal God does not exist. But we must go to the impersonal for the explanation of the personal. Personal is not sufficiently general. Personal is not giving the explanation from within. Personal is not answering our question of substance and qualities. Personal is not accepting our discussion between idealism and realism. So we have to go to impersonal. But the impersonal becomes the explanation, and then the personal becomes accepted, depending upon the impersonal. That is why we call Brahman always as Nirgun Sagun Brahma. Those who say Nirgun Brahma only, they are not able to explain the world. They will say illusion, 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 illusion. But illusion has to stand upon some Adhar. Without Adhar, how there can be illusion? And so, Buddhism says everything is an illusion, but there has to be an Adhar. So the Vedanta is telling that reality is one, it appears as many. And that reality, when it appears as many, appears as the controller, creator, preserver, destroyer. That is the appearance of the reality. But we must go to the impersonal for the explanation of the personal. For the impersonal is a much higher generalization than the personal. It includes everything. Matter, consciousness, energy, everything. It has been generalized most. The impersonal only can be infinite. The personal is limited. If you create the world, it is limited by the world also. Thus we preserve the personal and do not destroy it. Often the doubt comes to us that if we arrive at the idea of the impersonal God, the personal will be destroyed. That is wrong or half understanding of Vedanta. If we arrive at the idea of the impersonal man, the personal will be lost. But the Vedantic idea is not the destruction of the individual, but its real preservation. Real means explanation. We cannot prove the individual by any other means, but by referring to the universal, by proving that the individual is really the universal. Really. Otherwise it's a manifestation. If we think of the individual as separate from everything else in the universe, it cannot stand a minute. Such a thing never existed. We are taking ourselves to be separately real eternally. It will have no explanation. How we act and react upon each other? Impossible if we are separate. but we are the appearances of a common reality. And so we have connection with each other. We have connection with each other not through fathers and mothers or friends or through mind, through the one reality appearing as many. Then only you are connected with each other. Automatically, sameness and every good idea comes out of this. Such a thing never existed, mind you. In the fourth chapter, we will further explain that the individual never existed. Mind you. Secondly, by the application of the second principle, so this is more generalization, that the explanation of everything must come out of the nature of the thing, we are led to a still bolder idea and one more difficult to understand. It is nothing less than this, that the impersonal being, our highest generalization, is in ourselves. That is what Aruni is telling Shataketu. If it is the one principle, then what are we? It is in ourselves. It is our reality. That is how the connection is coming. And we are that. O Shataketu, thou art that. You are that impersonal being. That God for whom you have been searching all over the universe, now bring it to the practical experience and practical life. We are searching for God everywhere and we find Him within. That God for whom you have been searching all over the universe is all the time yourself. Yourself not in the personal sense. You are not an individual there. Not this body and mind which gets destroyed, but your reality. But in the impersonal, the man we now know, the manifested is personalized, but the reality of this is the impersonal. So whether you call it God or man or anything, manifested is personal, the reality is impersonal. Manifested is multiple, the reality is numenon. But the reality of this is the impersonal. To understand the personal, we have to refer it to the impersonal. Because you have to refer to the more general. And because you have to get explanation from within. So when we know that the reality is within us, and we are referred to that reality as the universal, then anything is explained. Otherwise, nothing can be explained rationally. The particular must be referred to the general, and that impersonal is the truth, the self of man. There will be various questions in connection with this. So now, establishing the fact that the impersonal being of Nirgun Brahma can explain all the things. Now we have so many questions we are asking about how this and how that. And Swamiji will explain that. There will be various questions in connection with this, and I shall try to answer them as we go on. Many difficulties will arise in our understanding. But first let us clearly understand the position of monism. If we understand the position of Advaita, then we can explain everything from that. If we have half understood it, not understood it, then we have so many questions in the mind. So Swamiji has brought the whole thing to this point, and now he says, let me clearly understand the position of monism. As manifested beings, we appear to be separate, but our reality is one. And the less we think of ourselves as separate from that one, the better for us. The less, that means in a jump we are not able to think we are the same. But we feel so much difference. I am small, I am this and I am that, and the more we feel the difference, we are going to our own destruction. We are taking the course of falsity. And so, when we relate ourselves to that reality, and slowly find the difference vanishing, then we are approaching the truth. The better for us. The more we think of ourselves as separate from the whole, the more miserable we become. Whole means the universal. From this monistic principle we get at the basis of ethics. Everything becomes explained. Why we should do good to others? Because there is no others. If this is other, then why we should do good to that? And I venture to say that we cannot get any ethics from anywhere else. We know that the oldest idea of ethics was the will of some particular being or beings. But few are ready to accept that now. So modern man does not accept. God told me, so I am doing this. Because it would be only a partial generalization. The Hindus say we must not do this or that because the Vedas say so. But the Christian is not going to obey the authority of the Vedas. The Christian says you must do this and not do that because of the Bible says so. That will not be binding on those who do not believe in the Bible. But we must have a theory which is large enough to take in all those various grounds. Just as there are millions of people who are ready to believe in a personal creator, there have also been thousands of the brightest minds in the world who felt that such ideas were not sufficient for them. Swamiji relatively has given figures. You understand? Just as there are millions of people who are ready to believe in a personal creator because they don't have this faculty of analysis. There have also been thousands, millions and thousands of the brightest minds, when they have the sharp mind in this world, who felt that such ideas were not sufficient for them and wanted something higher. And wherever religion was not broad enough to include all these minds, so the religion has to include everybody. Those who believe in personal God, okay, that personal God is a manifestation of the impersonal, you believe it. And those who want the rational explanation, you believe in the impersonal. So the religion which is inclusive only we want. Broad enough to include all these minds. The result was that the brightest minds in society were always outside of religion, especially in the Western world. And never was this so marked as at the present time, especially in Europe. America was developing. So Swamiji is talking about Europe. And there the rationalists were almost able to smash the belief in Christianity. That was the juncture when Swamiji has gone to Europe. And that is why they became more interested in Swamiji's lecture, because he is proposing a religion which no reason can contradict. So they felt satisfied. To include these minds, therefore, religion must become broad enough. Everything it claims must be judged from the standpoint of reason. Why religion should claim that they are not bound to abide by the standpoint of reason? No one knows. If one does not take the standard of reason, there cannot be any true judgment, even in the case of religions. Because our analytical mind wants it. One religion may ordain something very hideous. Swamiji is giving an example. For instance, the Mohammedan religion allows Mohammedans to kill all who are not of their religion, very clearly. Swamiji is stating this as a fact. It is clearly stated in the Quran, kill the infidels if they do not become Mohammedans. They must be put to fire and sword. Now if you tell a Mohammedan that this is wrong, he will naturally ask, how do you know that? How do you know it is not good? My book says it is. If you say your book is older, Christians, there will come the Buddhist and say my book is much older still. Then will come the Hindus and say, my books are the oldest of all. But can old or new decide the thing? Therefore, referring to books will not do. Where is the standard by which you can compare? You will say, look at the Sermon on the Mount. And the Mohammedans will reply, look at the ethics of the Quran, Shariat. The Mohammedan will say, who is the arbiter as to which is the better of the two? Neither the New Testament nor the Quran can be the arbiter in a quarrel between them. There must be some independent authority, and that cannot be any book, but something which is universal. And what is more universal than reason? There is a problem here. Swamiji himself has shown everybody does not have that capacity to reason, and that is where the quarrels come. But if you go through the original reason which Swamiji has shown in these 2-3 steps, and according to that try to judge everything, then only we can come to truth and we can follow it wholeheartedly. It has been said that reason is not strong enough. Swamiji himself has said it. It does not always help us to get at the truth. Many times it makes mistake, and therefore the conclusion is that we must believe in the authority of the church. That was said to me by a Roman Catholic, but I could not see the logic of it. On the other hand, I should say, if reason be so weak, a body of priests would be weaker. And I am not going to accept their verdict, but I will abide by my reason, because with all its weakness, there is some chance of my getting at truth through it, while by the other means there is no such hope at all. Swamiji is very, very clear. He knows the limitations of reason. Reason has the quality of disproving anything which is wrong, but it itself cannot show the truth, because reason requires 2-3 things to work about. How can it show the truth which is monism? It can indicate only. We should therefore follow reason and also sympathize with those who do not come to any sort of belief following reason, because following reason they become agnostic. For it is better that mankind should become atheist by following reason than blindly believe in 200 millions of gods on the authority of anybody. So here he includes the Hindus also, those who only believe. What we want is progress, development, realization, progress of our own growth, development of our consciousness, and finally realization. So Swamiji is driving everything towards realization. Through reason he is showing that without realization we cannot only talk. No theories ever made men higher. So from the beginning of practical Vedanta he has been telling this. See how rational. He knows the limitations of reason. No amount of books can help us to become purer. So simply following the book also will not help. The only power is in realization. So that is where we have to go finally. Practical Vedanta. And that lies in ourselves and comes from thinking. So rational analysis we apply and we will find within ourselves the explanation of everything. Let men think. A clod of earth never thinks, but it remains only a lump of earth. The glory of man is that he is a thinking being. It is the nature of man to think, and therein it differs from animals. Yes. I believe in reason and follow reason, having seen enough of the evils of authority. For I was born in a country where they have gone to the extreme of authority. So he talked about Muslims, not that he is hating them. He is showing the irrationality of every religion. Now he is coming to Hinduism and what we normally believe without going to the highest. The Hindus believe that creation has come out of the Vedas. How do you know there is a cow? Because the word cow is in the Vedas. How do you know there is a man outside? Because the word man is there. If it had not been, there would have been no man outside. That is what they say, authority with a vengeance. And it is not studied as I have studied it. Vedas, how they are studied, but some of the most powerful minds have taken it up and spun out wonderful logical theories around it. They have reasoned it out, and there it stands, a whole system of philosophy, and thousands of the brightest intellects have been dedicated through thousands of years to the working out of this theory. Wonderful. Such has been the power of authority. That means accept the Vedas and then theorize. As the Christians will say, accept the main theology and then accept similarly. Such has been the power of authority, and great are the dangers thereof. It stunts the growth of humanity. Accepting something, how can you reason? And we must not forget that we want growth. We want to expand. We want to go nearer the reality which is universal. That is called growth. Even in all relative truth, more than the truth itself, we want the exercise. That is our life. So even in science or wherever, what we get is not sufficient. Our spirit of going to the most generalized and find the extensions within, that is more important. And that we have to follow. The monistic theory has this merit that it is the most rational of all the religious theories that we can conceive of. So, reason cannot prove anything. But reason has to be satisfied. And monistic theory is satisfying to the reason. There what Swamiji has reached, we'll take it up this on the next turn. So, through this application of reason, Swamiji has shown that all other theories are insufficient. Though reason cannot itself show the truth, but reason is showing that if you apply reason, it should not contradict reason, and so Advaita theory is the most rational, that is the most point Swamiji has brought about. And then he will say that this is what we have to practice. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.